This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
ABC Wednesdays.
Y'all complain all day. We want books. We want paper towels in the classroom. Bet you want raises, too.
I'm still waiting on the paper towels.
Abbott Elementary returns with a new season.
We asked the district for more after-school programs. They gave us $50 for class pets instead.
Critics cheer. Abbott Elementary continues to be one of the funniest and most beloved shows on TV.
What y'all doing out there?
Taking bribes.
Proud of y'all.
Abbott Elementary, Wednesdays, 9:30, 8:30 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. Welcome back, weirdos, to another episode of the History for Weirdos podcast.
And we're glad to be back and bringing you another epic story.
Yeah, Andrew has a really impactful figure from Latin American history to discuss with us today. Hopefully you can't hear our puppy running in the background, but you probably can.
Yeah.
So we apologize for that.
He decided to have his zoomies like literally right when we started recording.
Yeah, he was laying down, like passed out until we started recording, and now he has zoomies.
And now he's just, running around the back. You'll hear like...
Yeah, we're so sorry. But before Andrew jumps into this week's wonderful episode, I'm really excited for it. I wanted to let all the weirdos know that the next two coming episodes are going to be spooky ones.
Spooky.
We know the weirdos love the spooky weird history, so do not want to miss those.
Oh yeah, we're going to end October with a bang, that's for sure.
That's for sure. All right, love, why don't you tell us about this captivating figure?
Okay, well, we're just going to get right into it.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a guy by the name of like Simón Bolívar?
Yeah, I think I have.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he was quite a prolific guy. In fact, a lot of historians have compared him to like a Latin George Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's a very big deal. And even now he's like kind of almost seen as like a godlike mythic figure.
Yeah.
In like a few different like Latin American countries, like at least half a dozen.
Yes, he's very, very important to a lot of people. I know that.
Yeah, he's super, super important. So we're going to get into him. I mean, and so he's a revolutionary, right? That's what he's known for.
Okay.
But it maybe surprise you that he actually had a very privileged upbringing.
Oh, that is interesting. As a revolutionary, typically the privileged want to keep things the way they are.
Exactly. So Simón Bolívar was born Simón José Antonio de la Santísima Trinidad Bolívar Palacios Ponte y Blanco.
See, we have long names. You always make fun of me and my family that our names are so long.
They're so long.
Yeah, but it makes it more dramatic. It gives you more main character energy.
I mean, that was like absurdly dramatic, but yeah.
And then look at who he was.
He's Simón Bolívar.
He's Simón Bolívar. He's the main character.
Okay, so I'm not going to repeat that name, but he was born on July 24th, 1783 in Caracas, Venezuela, to American-born Spanish parents, or criollo.
Yes, criollo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've referenced it a few times, the social caste system that existed.
Exactly. So he was the youngest of 4 children. And the Bolivar family served in the colonial bureaucracy and married into wealthy families in Caracas, over kind of like centuries.
Okay.
And the result of this was they gave him a very privileged life. And his family was quite wealthy. So in fact, Bolivar, like at the time of his birth, his family was one of the richest families in all of South America at that time. Yeah, so they were loaded.
I had no idea.
Yes. Historian John Lynch has described Bolivar's childhood as both privileged yet deprived.
Oh, why deprived?
So his father died of tuberculosis when he was just 2, and his mother would also die of TB just before his 9th birthday.
Oh my gosh, that's so young.
Yeah.
He was orphaned.
So there's 4 children.
Right.
So Bolivar and his 3 siblings were raised apart from one another and were primarily raised by his family's like slaves.
What?
Yeah.
His family owned people?
Yes.
Oh my God. And then they had them raise the children, the enslaved people.
Yep.
These people sound great.
I know. So Simón was raised by an enslaved woman named Hippolyta.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's a good name.
It's a great name. Who he viewed as like a parental figure.
I'm sure. Oh, that's so sad.
Remember that.
Okay.
Remember that, especially towards the end of the episode. So on top of all of this, his legal guardians were his maternal uncles who just raised like Simón Bolívar because he was set to inherit a ton of money.
Oh, so they did it for money.
They did it for money. They did not do it for love of their nephew. Yeah, so they didn't give one hoot about Bolivar.
It sounds like they were likely just the guardians, like the legal guardians, and Hippolyta was actually his mother.
That's the feeling that I got from this as well. Given all that we know about Bolivar's early childhood, it's a little surprising, but not super surprising that he was considered unruly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That kid's going to act out for attention.
Yeah. So he bounced around in his teens from boarding school to tutors, and one of his tutors was actually sent into exile when Simón was only like 14 years old. And this would become... Getting sent into exile, I think, would be a common theme throughout his life.
Was the tutor exiled because of like radical ideas?
Yes, like quote unquote, like liberal beliefs.
Yeah.
And I'll get into like the political philosophy. So a lot of the terms I'm going to be using have like 21st century like equivalents, but they're very different. Like the words are the same, but they mean very different things. And I'm going to make a note about that later.
Okay.
Yeah, basically he had pro-liberty and independence leanings. So that's a no-no in like, Spain.
Yes.
Or New Spain at this time. So Simón was sent to Spain, funny enough, to study in January of 1799. It would be the first time that he would set foot in Europe.
1799. Wow.
Yeah, and he milled around the Royal Spanish court and started a relationship with Maria Teresa Rodriguez del Toro y Eliza.
That's a good name.
Yeah. The daughter of another wealthy family from Caracas.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think I even explained it earlier. That class, the criollos, that's people who aren't necessarily born in Spain, but are Spanish by blood, marrying each other only.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So they're like just European ethnically.
Yes. So it makes sense that he would marry someone like her.
Exactly. So on May 26, 1802, Bolivar, who was only 18 at the time, married Del Toro. They returned to Venezuela later that year and lived happily ever after.
No,
Just
they didn't.
kidding. No, she died of yellow fever in January the following year.
Oh my goodness.
And he would never marry again.
Never?
Never. That was his one and only marriage.
Poor Simón so far. Everyone he loves dies.
A lot of death. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, imagine he's what, like 19 at the oldest, and he's already a widower.
Oh God, when you put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think he's only 18.
that's so tragic. And as you pointed out, very absurdly privileged upbringing, and yet he knows pain.
Yeah. He knows a lot of pain. It's like privileged yet deprived. It's a really good, I think, way of describing it. So he was devastated, and he also did swear that he would never remarry. Like, he'd make a lot of proclamations, or not a lot, but he'd make a few proclamations throughout his life, and they'd all would end up being true.
Ooh.
That was that was the first one.
A man of his word.
Yes, absolutely. He returned to Spain in 1803, and the first thing he did was travel to Madrid to console his father-in-law.
That's so sweet.
And it's here where a bread shortage in 1804 forced Simón Bolívar and his buddy Fernando Rodriguez del Toro, who also happened to be a relative of his late wife, they traveled to Paris. And they did it just in time for Napoleon's proclamation naming himself Emperor of the French. And they witnessed it on May 18th, 1804.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's really huge.
That's a huge historical event to just like, oh, I just happen to be present for this.
I know. I can only imagine what that would have been like for like a young, idealistic Bolivar.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that really made an impact on him.
Absolutely. And the two friends lived in an apartment where they met with other prominent South American figures such as Carlos de Montufar, Vicente Rocafuerte, and Simón Rodriguez to discuss Spanish-American independence.
Ooh.
Yeah, good stuff. Of course, like the Americans were like, yeah. He also made friends with naturalist thinkers Alexander von Humboldt and Amy Bonpland, and even had an affair with the Countess de Roux de Vouliagh. I think I butchered that French.
A comtesse.
Yeah, comtesse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so he didn't remarry, but he wasn't a monk.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
he could get away with it. He's a very privileged young man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but even though Bolivar was having, a great time, he needed more. And so in April 1805, Bolivar, Rodriguez, and Del Toro left Paris for a grand tour of Italy. And they made their way to Milan, where, funny enough, they were able to witness Napoleon's coronation as King of Italy on May 26, 1805.
What are the odds?
Yeah, it's wild.
It's almost like Napoleon's stalking them.
Yeah, or he's probably stalking Napoleon.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that was the way it went.
And he eventually traveled to Rome and learned more about the Roman Republic, which absolutely fascinated him.
Oh, you can relate.
I can relate, my guy. I can relate. I literally put in my notes, bro, I get it.
I was really tempted today, by the way, to look up apartments in Rome and how much they cost, but I stopped myself.
Yeah, you can't do that.
I didn't want to break my own heart.
No. And it's funny because he has a second kind of like revelation that comes to him right outside Rome on the Mons Sacre. Or Mons Sacre.
Mons Sacre?
Well, it wouldn't be French.
Oh.
But it would be, I think,
Sacred
Italian.
Hill.
Yeah, Sacred Hill. Exactly. And this, and it was sacred for even the ancient Romans, for a reason I'll get into in a second here. But he's there in August of 1805, and he vowed to Del Toro, his buddy, that he would end Spanish rule in the Americas.
Ooh, his second proclamation.
Ooh. And so the Mons Sacre was a hill outside of Rome that was the site of the famous first secession of the plebs or plebeians, which was really a monumental, like, important victory for the common people of Rome way, way, way back in like 494 BC.
And he must have known that going there, right?
Yes, exactly.
And that inspired him how much later? Like
2,300 years later,
that's
roughly.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And I'm not going to get into the specifics of the event, but basically the patricians, who were kind of like the ruling class of Rome at the time, ceded a lot of power to the plebeians. And I can't imagine that Bolivar must have felt that strong pull and desire to do something similar in his homeland.
Yeah. That's incredible.
I know, right? And just to put this in perspective, guys, like this would have been like almost 400 years prior to the birth of Julius Caesar. So this would have been like a long, long, long time ago.
Yeah.
So it was during this time that a lot of his philosophical beliefs started to take hold. We're going back to Simón Bolívar, right? And he would become a classical liberal and a Republican. So I have to make a note because, like, first of all, this has nothing to do with like a lot of like common terms that you hear today. Like when you're talking about political philosophy, especially during this time, a Republican meant someone who believed in like a republic. And has nothing to do with like the present day Republican Party in the United States, or even like a liberal, right? That might mean something today, especially in American politics, but it just meant more of like a supporter of like free markets, I suppose, is like the best way to put it. So I'm going to like use those terms, I think, sometimes throughout this episode. And I just want to be very clear. That's like what I mean by that.
Generally, he's someone that wants things to be more
like free
equal.
And yeah, exactly. Equal, free. Yeah, and that's a really good way of putting it. So, influenced by the likes of Hobbes, Spinoza, Baron de Holbach, Hume, Montesquieu, and Rousseau, he wanted to bring Enlightenment philosophy back to the Spanish Americas.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. I agree with that. So interestingly, Bolivar was a bit of an Anglophile and often looked to the British for help in securing freedom and independence for Latin American countries, but that would never work out for him.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird move.
It's because it's like, I know you guys hate Spain, so like maybe help us.
Yeah.
And they did have some sort of elements of like, because they were a monarchy, but they did have democratic elements baked in their monarch. Like they didn't have like an absolute monarch.
Yes, and that's kind of like what the U.S. colonies did when they went to France, and they're like, we know you hate Britain, help us.
Hey, exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't give a one hoot about democracy or republics or whatever.
No.
Yeah. So, I guess it sort of makes sense again, like because, or that even like that the British would entertain the idea of helping Bolivar because one, like, Spain is kind of like their enemy, sort of, kind of in a way.
Yeah. Frenemy, maybe.
Frenemy. And it's also makes sense too, because they at this time they had lost their, like the American colonies, right?
Yeah.
They still had Canada. But they're like, if we're going to lose like colonies, we don't want other European countries to have colonies over there too.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So Simón Bolívar also had a vision that was like a federation of all like Latin American republics.
Okay.
Each would be governed by an executive and a constitution modeled after the British Constitution.
Okay.
He stated that federalism, that's what we have in the United States, or we're supposed to have, and it was the quote-unquote perfect government, but that it could not work in Spanish America because of the scars of Spanish imperialism that had left the people too unprepared for federalist ideas. This guy's going really deep into political philosophy.
I wonder what he meant by, I understand the scars, right? The mass murder of indigenous people, the slave trade. Yeah, the scars are very evident. I wonder what he meant that they aren't ready for it.
I don't know. I really don't know.
I wonder if it was a little elitist of him to think that.
I wonder if it had to do with, I don't know, the difference between like the Spanish crown and the British crown, and how like there were just more like democratic ideals within like Great Britain than there were in Spain at the time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that had something to do with it.
Possibly, yeah.
And that like there was, I can't speak to about British government. I don't know enough, but we had federalism from very early on, and it must have come from like some form of it must have come from the British. So I'm guessing like we were just like the American colonies were just more predisposed to it.
Okay.
That's just my own personal like thinking about it, and I literally just came up with that right now. So I'm not like, I would not call myself an expert necessarily.
You heard it here, folks. Andrew Iverson says he's an expert.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so Simón would actually spend a lot of time in 1807, funny enough, in the United States.
Oh my gosh.
Before returning to Venezuela in June of 1807. And at first, it didn't seem like many of his peers back home were really too keen on independence from Spain. But the following year, something would happen that would change everyone's mind. It was in 1808 that news reached them that Napoleon had invaded the Iberian Peninsula, like basically Spain and Portugal, and even installed his brother effectively as the ruler of Spain. Not the king, but like kind of like in the overseer.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. And on November 24th, 1808, a group of Creole citizens presented a petition demanding an independent government, though, unsurprisingly, they were arrested.
Well, now they're asking for an independent government, now that it affects them.
I know, right?
So basic.
But more surprisingly is that Bolivar had not signed that petition and was safe from arrest, I think because he got tipped off beforehand.
Ooh, it's good to have friends.
Exactly. Lucky for him. So French victories in Spain from 1809 to 1810 caused the collapse of the anti-French Spanish government and replaced it with like a regency council. And in April 1810, 2 delegates of this council arrived in Venezuela and succeeded in expelling the existing government and created like the Supreme Junta of Caracas. So Bolivar had been absent during this time, and he did offer his services as like a diplomat for this new government.
Okay.
And being the Anglophile that he was, Bolivar was sent to Great Britain on a diplomatic mission, though it ended up being a failure more or less, and Bolivar was back in Venezuela like later that year.
And his qualifications for being a diplomat would be...
He was rich, baby.
He was a rich kid that was well-traveled.
Hey listeners, quick question. Do you know what extraterrestrial radio signals and a mushroom from Texas have in common? Or what a number station is and why it's so haunting and creepy? If you're intrigued by those questions, Midnight Facts for Insomniacs has the answers.
Join us, Duncan and Shane, hosts, comedians, and best friends, on hilarious deep dives into obscure facts from science, history, and pop culture. We've got everything from the scandalous history of megachurches to the mind-bending science of black holes and eerie tales of ghost towns.
So whether you're nocturnal, sleep-deprived, or just a fan of laughing and learning, we'll keep you entertained. Find Midnight Facts for Insomniacs wherever you're listening to this show.
At New Balance, we believe if you run, you're a runner. However you choose to do it. Because when you're not worried about doing things the right way, you're free to discover your way. Come and be a winner. And that's what running's all about. Run your way at newbalance.com/running.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
Yeah.
Well read, well traveled.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also have to say that, like, from here on out, guys, it gets really complicated.
Yeah.
There are a lot of moving pieces in a lot of different places, and like piecing this story from like this point on is really, really hard. So I'm going to be kind of like, there are times where I'm going to be kind of doing like some more broad sweeps and just kind of like painting a general picture.
Yes.
Just because this could be a whole podcast, I feel like.
Oh, absolutely. He overlaps with the histories of like what, half a dozen countries?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. So they all have their own, issues that they're dealing with, and yeah, you already know.
Yeah, you already know.
You already know. It's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And I really do think he was also trying to do something like kind of like what the United States was doing, like how, like, right, he wanted federalism.
Yeah.
And so like he wanted basically each like little country
to have a central government.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't work out that way. Spoilers, guys.
It does not. No, it does not. It does not. Okay, so while he was in England, liberal economic reforms had been passed in Venezuela, so allowing for elections to be held for congressional representatives.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and Bolivar, along with fellow revolutionary Francisco Miranda, formed the Patriotic Society and got Miranda elected to the Congress.
Oh.
Yeah. On July 5th, 1811, the Congress formally declared Venezuelan independence.
Yay! Felicidades, Venezuela!
That may be all well and good, but the first Republic of Venezuela was formed on a weak base with little support.
Oh.
Enemies and conservative citizens with Spanish ancestry, disenfranchised native and mixed peoples, and the provinces of Venezuela, which were already hostile towards like Caracas in general, were all against this republic.
Oh, wow. For their own reasons.
Yeah, for all their own reasons.
Those are very different groups.
Yes. The republic gathered like a militia to fight this coalition, and it was led by Bolivar's buddy, Del Toro, the guy he was milling around Europe with.
Yeah, the relative of his deceased wife.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Though this got a little awkward for Bolivar since Del Toro and Miranda hated each other.
Oh, and he's in the middle.
He's like, I'm friends with both of you. God, talk about awkward.
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty awkward.
That's super awk sauce. Well, Del Toro was eventually stripped of his command, and that position went to Miranda, ironically enough.
Oh.
Yeah. And then a natural disaster occurred, which many people thought was an act of God.
Yeah.
So
I know, mi gente. We were definitely going to think that.
Yeah. On March 26, 1812, Caracas, along with much of like Republican Venezuela, was devastated by a massive earthquake.
Oh my gosh. That is...
Yes.
Obviously, I don't think that's actually an act of God, but that is very interesting timing.
It's really unfortunate for Bolivar.
Yes.
So many people believe that, yeah, again, this earthquake was a sign of God, and Bolivar himself helped dig through debris and rubble in search for survivors. Survivors.
There must have not been many.
No, there weren't. And things were just not looking good for the Republic at this point, right? By the end of January of 1812, Miranda capitulated to the Royalist army. Mm-hmm. So that it was pretty much the end of the First Republic here. Bolivar barely managed to escape by hiding in one of his friends' homes and eventually was able to successfully evade capture and flee to Curacao.
Oh, wow. Curacao.
Yeah. Which is like a little island off the coast of South America.
Mm-hmm.
Bolivar offered his services as a military leader to the United Provinces of New Granada against the Royalists, which is like kind of like modern day Colombia, more or less.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And it was during his trip to take on his post commanding a 70-man garrison that Bolivar issued the Cartagena Manifesto, outlining his beliefs regarding the defeat of the Republic and his political ideals.
Homie,
he's really nerdy when it came to political philosophy.
And did anybody ask you to write that manifesto?
No way.
I really don't think so. Did anyone read it cover to cover?
I seriously doubt it.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I mean, maybe someone did.
Really? No.
So, he called for the new Granadan republics to help him invade Venezuela in order to prevent the Royalists from invading New Granada. Bolivar would then, without asking for any permission, by the way, launched an offensive and successfully secured control of the Magdalena River by early January 1813. And again, that's like in modern day Colombia.
Okay.
In February, Bolivar joined forces with a Republican colonel and helped capture the city of Cucuta, which would be kind of important in a regional sense. Because he set up his HQ there and he received honorary Colombian citizenship too.
I was about to say he's having way better luck over here in Colombia.
And I think that's why. Well, I'm not going to spoil it.
Okay.
Not yet, at least.
Not yet.
So, and it's here that he issues a fairly controversial decree.
Oop.
And it's on May 14th, 1813, Bolivar launches the Admirable Campaign to free Venezuela. And in it, he included a decree of war to the death, which offered the death of all Spaniards in South America who were not aiding his cause.
Oh, yeah. He went a little too far, maybe.
Yeah, he got so swept up with his
with his successes.
Yeah,
and
that
his
he
manifesto.
He's like, I will turn to fascism before, this is before fascism was even a thing.
But literally, if you're not with me, you're against me.
Yeah, he's going full Anakin there.
And you're dead.
Yeah. Dude, it's kind of true, actually. Like, low-key, that's literally exactly what it was like.
Jeez Louise.
I know. Oh, well, anyways, regardless, though, of this controversial thing.
Another proclamation.
Yeah. He is very successful militarily because within a few months in early August, Bolivar reaches Caracas. He's back in Venezuela. He's already at Caracas. And within the next couple of months, he expels all Royalist forces out of Venezuela and is given the title El Libertador, the Liberator.
El Liberador? Let me see.
It's this.
Oh, El Libertador.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, that is hard to say.
The Liberator.
Libertador.
Yeah, and that was by the Caracas City Council.
I have heard him called that, basically, like just the Great Liberator.
Yes, exactly. And that's kind of, I guess that's like the spirit of the word.
Yeah.
And because of his military success, he is exalted into unprecedented power and was made the president of the Second Republic of Venezuela. he was essentially like a dictator, like a kind of like a Roman style dictator,
right? Where
he had like a supreme authority. You know, and of course that makes sense given his admiration for ancient Rome.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know this guy, man.
Be mindful, weirdos.
Yeah.
If Andrew ever takes over, he's going to go for dictator.
Roman style dictator. So this didn't last long for him, however.
Oh, why did I have a feeling?
And he was kicked out of Caracas by July of the very same year by royalist forces. Like, this is what I'm talking about. It's so like it almost reads like the Rome. Okay, if you are, this is really, really like a deep rabbit hole, but in the 3rd century, in China, there was like a period of time where like basically like everything happened all at once. There was a bunch of civil wars, and it just reads like it's called a romance. Like the romance of the 3 kingdoms, I think is what that era is called. And this kind of reminds me of it. It's just like a lot of back and forth. And it's just like, it's hard to keep track of what's actually happening.
Feels like a ping pong match.
Yeah, exactly. With like a bunch of different sides.
Yeah, everyone playing at the same time, overlapping.
Yes. In fact, the video game Dynasty Warriors is about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, is that how you learned about it?
So originally, yes. I took a class in college where I was reading this. It was a history class. It was an elective, unsurprising, right? And I was reading the literature, and I was like, "Why does this sound so familiar? Like, I know these stories." And I was like, "Oh my god, it's from a video game I played when I was a kid."
That's crazy. See, video games can be useful.
No, absolutely. That's how I found out about ancient Rome when I was like 7 years old. It was from a video game.
That's adorable.
I know. I had no idea about anything, but I was like, these centurions are cool.
That's all a 7-year-old needs to know.
That's all. Yeah, seriously. So back to Simón.
He's kicked out of Caracas.
He's in exile again. And this is like, he's formally in exile starting on September 8th, 1814. And so he goes back to New Granada, Colombia, and where they like him,
Yeah.
And is given command of all the New Granadan armies in January of 1815. And he fights for months against the royalist forces led by Del Castillo, who was the commander who actually kicked him out of Caracas.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So ultimately this leads to like a sort of like stalemate truce in May of 1815. And he just goes to Jamaica for self-exile.
What?
Yeah. That's what I'm telling. It's like this. It's insane.
Simón.
I know.
Exile. Again.
That's how I feel. So he eventually makes it to Haiti, where he lives amongst Republicans in exile. Again, people who fought for the Republic,
right, or
the Republics. And it is here that in January of 1816, he actually meets with the president of Haiti, Alexander Pétion, where he secures funding to invade Venezuela and mainland South America.
F yeah.
Yeah. He's like, let's go again, baby.
Again. I freaking love that Haiti did that.
Oh, yeah.
Because Haiti has the successful slave revolt, right?
Yes, the only one in history, I believe.
Yeah, where they were able to totally on their own get rid of the colonial powers that be.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you even mentioned that, because the caveat here for this funding was that Bolivar promised to free all slaves upon kicking out royalist forces.
Yes.
And remember, I told you, like, he was raised by Hippolyta.
Yes.
There's this.
Bare minimum, Bolivar. Bare minimum.
Well, let's just say I wouldn't get your hopes up. It gets super complicated over the next few years, but we're going to skip forward to 1819.
Okay.
All you need to know is that there are lots of back and forth and fighting with land being won, land being lost. And it's just like, honestly, it's so mind numbing. It's just like, I'm skipping it.
Can you imagine being just like a normal peasant at this time, as you and I would be, and just being like, oh my God, stop fighting.
Like, stop, please, for the love of God.
We're hungry.
Yeah, give us food. It's here that Bolivar gets a little bit of taste of what civilian-led rule is like. On February 15th, 1819, the National Congress met, and Bolivar gave a speech advocating for a centralized government modeled after the British government and for racial equality. Civil authority was to be relinquished to the Congress.
Okay.
So like elected officials, right? And the next day, Bolivar was elected as president of Gran Colombia.
Grand Colombia.
Yeah.
That's a cool name.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And this is like the start of what he envisioned, right?
Oh, and it's Grand Colombia because it's like a ton of...
Yeah, or Gran, G-R-A-N. Gran Colombia.
Oh, Gran Colombia.
Yeah.
Because it's what we would like present day, multiple countries.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he would propose later that year that this country and Venezuela should merge, making one unified country. So a couple years later, the Congress of Calcutta, remember that was that city that he had established an HQ in 1821 solidified the notion that the separate countries should be unified under the presidency of Simón Bolívar. He would be sworn in on October 3rd, 1821.
Oh my gosh, all his dreams are coming true.
His dreams, that proclamation on Mont Sacre
yeah.
in Rome, outside of Roma.
And he's finally getting Venezuela on his side.
Exactly. So by now, large swaths of South America was under his command. I'm sorry, that was Pericles, guys.
Large swaths of South America
were under his command, and something else surprising would happen. So in 1823, Bolivar was asked by the Peruvian Congress to assume command of their armies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now people are just giving him more and more armies?
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty cool, huh?
So they're like, assume command so that we can be free?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're also fighting the Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's crazy. Later in that year, all Spanish royalist forces would be defeated, and Bolivar would eventually become dictator of Peru the following year.
What is happening?
I know. Yeah, he's like president / dictator of Peru.
Okay. And Gran Colombia.
And yes.
Okay, which also now includes Venezuela?
Yes.
Okay.
But the tale of Simón Bolívar, right? Like, is more of a cautionary tale starting from here on out, because right, he has achieved all of his kind of grand designs at this point.
Yeah.
So he becomes dictator and or president of a few different South American countries and is seemingly on his way of achieving his dream all the way back in Rome of creating just like one unified state. That was not to be, though. He faces revolts at every turn. He tries to resign at times and is rejected. Yeah,
what?
Even though he's fighting off revolts and he's like, okay, fine, if you don't want me here, I'm resigning. Nope, they don't accept the resignation.
They're like, no, we still want you to do stuff.
And only to face like rebellions later, like just months later.
That's so stupid.
And so on August 27th, 1828, he even assumed supreme power as like the president liberator of Colombia, abolishing the office of the vice president. And the very next month, on September 25th, 1828, a group of young liberals made an attempt on Bolivar's life that was thwarted.
Oh my gosh. That escalated quickly.
He had to spend the night hiding under a bridge until being rescued by loyal soldiers.
Wow. Oh, that was just luck.
Yeah, that was luck.
Oh my gosh.
And at this point, he is depressed.
Yeah.
He's depressed, and on top of that, he's in ill health. Excuse me.
Oh, he's sick.
He's sick. Yes, he's really sick. An attempt had been made on his life by people who who believed as he had once believed, or who he still believed maybe in his own way.
Yeah, he's experiencing some moral injury right now, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And Venezuela even votes to secede from Gran Colombia in 1829.
Venezuela is really not down for Simón Bolivar's plans, and he's like Venezuelan.
Yes. And I mean, they love him there.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter like where you even lean, and I'll talk about this at the end, but like lean politically in Venezuela, it's like everyone is like, Simón Bolivar is our guy.
That's wild, because
in his time they were like, no, you're not our guy.
You're not our guy for sure.
I mean, and so Bolivar, in the next year in 1830, that's like he's had enough. He's done. He's like, he retreats, he resigns. It's accepted, and he retreats from public life. He's like, I'm over this. He sold all possessions and departed from Bogota on May 8th, 1830. And he arrived in Cartagena by the end of June and waited for a ship to take him to England.
Wow.
Yeah. But that wasn't to be. His health continued to decline, and since there was no ship like going to England soon, he just was moved to Barranquilla in October of 1830. And it's here that he dies in December of that year, December 17th, 1830, at the age of 47 from tuberculosis. The same thing that killed his mom and father.
Wow, that's so tragic. So he dies in Colombia then?
Yes.
Wow.
So his body was dressed in a borrowed shirt because he had like sold off everything. And he was interred in the Cathedral Basilica of Santa Marta on December 20th, 1830.
Get softer, smoother, and more even-toned skin after just one use with the new Gentle Exfoliating line from Cetaphil. Formulated with a unique triple acid blend that promotes surface skin cell renewal, these gentle chemical exfoliators remove dead skin cells and refine skin's texture while hydrating, resulting in softer, smoother, more even-looking skin. Shop the new Cetaphil Gentle Exfoliating line in the face and body aisles at your local Target store or online at Cetaphil.com.
This episode is brought to you by Cricket Wireless. There's nothing worse than surprises in your phone bill, so it's good to know Cricket has 100% honest and transparent pricing. At Cricket, the price you see is the price you pay. And for that price, you get Cricket's blazing fast and reliable nationwide 5G. It's no wonder Cricket customers are so happy. Visit cricketwireless.com to learn more. Cricket 5G requires a compatible device and is not available everywhere. For coverage, see cricketwireless.com/map.
Overnight, Dunkin's pumpkin spice coffee has sent folks into a cozy craze. I'm Lauren LaTulip reporting live from home in my hand-knit turtleneck that my Nana made me. Cinnamony.
The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be.
What a tragic ending for a once very promising hero.
Yeah, and it's interesting because his body gets exhumed a couple times and moved. And the latest time it was actually exhumed was as recently as 2011.
Wow.
Yeah, because they wanted, I don't know why, it was whoever, I don't know if it was Hugo Chavez. I think he was still in power at that time.
Yeah, I think so.
He exhumed the body to prove that he wasn't poisoned, but ironically enough,
no,
the tests were inconclusive.
So he just disturbed this man's resting place for no reason.
Yeah.
Hugo Chavez.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. So his legacy today is viewed mainly positively, right? And is seen as a liberator. But during his time and immediately afterwards, he was actually viewed much more harshly.
It sounds like it, yeah.
I mean, multiple attempts were made on his life, right? Including that one notable one that I mentioned. And again, those were by people who had the same political philosophy that he did. Initial thoughts and views on Bolivar were negative, mainly stemming from his like authoritarian stances.
I had a feeling.
Yeah. And the fact that he never freed the Haitian slaves, a promise he made to the president of Haiti.
Oh my gosh. He never freed them?
Never freed them.
Okay, dude. Not chill.
That's not, yeah, that was probably one of the least chill things that he did.
Haiti helped you out when no one else would.
And the promise of genocide, that's also pretty bad.
Yeah, that's also pretty bad.
Yeah.
What a complicated character.
Very complicated, right?
Yeah.
I still think, personally, this is like how I view him. I do view him to be positive, but he definitely succumbed to some of the darker parts of his nature.
Extremely flawed, yeah. Like, he was so hyper focused on getting that power that he lost sight of like his purpose. Yeah,
exactly. That's a really good way of putting it. So, and it's kind of weird because like in the mid 19th century, kind of almost out of nowhere, it seems like he started getting like a cult like following.
Interesting.
So this is pretty shortly after his death, right?
Yes.
Like maybe only like 2 decades or so, maybe so slightly less.
Maybe the next generation.
Yeah. They're like, wait a minute, this guy's actually kind of cool. And then it's like, again, like it's almost cult like the following that he gets in, after he died. And now, like in present day, multiple South American countries have claimed him and even have portraits of him, giant portraits of him in important government offices, and that's Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there might be more even.
Right.
And he has achieved a sort of immortality now, as not only countries, but different political groups, again, all want to be associated with him, no matter their political leanings.
Interesting.
Because he is that kind of revered, especially, again, in South America.
Yeah. Kind of like you said, similar to a George Washington figure.
Exactly. And, he was a very flawed individual, but he did pretty great things. And that is the story and life, the crazy life of Simón Bolívar.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was so crazy.
It was, I mean, shout out to Felicia. Thank you so much for helping me get these notes, because that was insane. Like, it was like, that's one of the hardest stories I think I've ever done.
Yes.
Like, about a person, because usually it's much more linear and it's kind of easier to follow. This was just like, oh my God, what is happening?
Yeah, you're right. That could be an entire podcast.
Yeah, we could easily do like an entire 20-part series on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not even exaggerating.
There's a Latin American movie that came out about him fairly recently that maybe we should watch.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I doubt it's a Venezuelan production, but maybe from Colombia.
It's not Mexico?
No, I don't think so. No, it's one of these countries that he so greatly impacted, made a movie about his life. It would be interesting to see their perspective, like how they choose to portray him.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we should watch it.
I'm really interested. Yeah, I'd be down to watch that.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Andrew. That was incredible. You taught me so much. All I knew was like he freed a lot of countries. I see a picture of him on a horse with a sword in my head, and that's it.
Fun fact, that sword was stolen.
Really?
Yeah, like, I mean, decades ago. But
my gosh.
Yeah, it was stolen. Yeah. How wild is that?
From who?
I think it was some sort of like either it wasn't like either a liberation group or a terrorist group, something like that.
Like some radical group.
Yeah.
Stole it from the government.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know his sword, one of his swords at least, is used in the swearing in of a new president in a country. I don't remember which country right now.
It might be Colombia.
Might be.
I'm not sure, though. I'm not sure about that one.
Weirdos, disregard everything I just said.
In a country. That kind of reminds me of like years ago when like Fox News had that graphic of like the different Mexicos. I was
thinking about that the whole time.
Yeah, there was like soccer Mexico, like llama Mexico.
No, you're telling it wrong.
Well, okay, well, you tell it then.
It was a Fox newscaster said something about like, and this is happening in like dozens of Mexican countries.
Yes. Okay. You're right.
And then the memes that came out of that were hilarious.
Yes. And that's like everyone's like labeling like different like South American or even Central American countries as like different Mexicos. Like,
oh my God.
And then, like, especially in Central America, where you have like a bunch of like little countries.
They're so small. Yeah.
They were just called like collectively like little Mexicos.
It was so bad.
There was like one called Cocaine Mexico. I think that was Colombia.
That is so, it was so messed up.
Yeah.
But it was.
Communist Mexico's Cuba.
Oh, that's so sad. Okay. The weirdos can't know how dark our humor gets.
I know. I'm sorry, guys. Okay.
And I wanted to say, wow, having a day. I too died of tuberculosis once.
Oh my God. Okay. We can only dump so much on the weirdos. They're going to be like, oh my God, you guys are insane. I guess that makes sense. History for weirdos.
Yes, exactly. So if you all want to hear about the time I died from tuberculosis, you'll have to let us know.
In a past life, to be very clear.
Wow. What a spoiler.
Yeah.
That's basically the story.
Because I think people will be like, what is she talking about?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely getting a sinus infection.
Yeah.
Something's making me loopy.
Well, you hear it here first, folks. Oh my God. Okay.
Well, we have to wrap this up now. So thank you so much, weirdos.
Until next time, weirdos.
Adios.
Adios.